A main purpose of my Alzheimer's Proof project, a very personal one in fact, is to try to reduce my odds of getting dementia. From time to time, news items cross my desk that hold some promise for this preventive aim. So in this video, I'll draw your attention to some of the possible preventive powers of walnuts. My dad died from complications related to Alzheimer's disease in 2016. So for sure, dementia runs on his side of my family. But as it happens, my grandma on my mom's side also had cognitive impairment, even though she died of a heart attack. As mentioned in a dedicated video, my risk arguably comes from two directions, a genetic double whammy. If you can relate to that, feel free to drop me a comment about your own situation. In any event, I am always encouraged when I come across some good news for a change. So here it is in a nutshell. Walnuts may be good for preserving cognitive health. And if that's all you wanted to know, then feel free to go and sprinkle them into your diet. But for a few of the whys and wherefores, including recommended serving amounts, please stick around. There are a number of possible starting points. But let's go back approximately a decade. Circa 2014 to 2015, researchers at the New York State Institute for Basic Research in Developmental Disabilities found that potent ingredients in walnuts can have beneficial effects in reducing the risk, delaying the onset, slowing the progression of, or even preventing Alzheimer's disease. Investigators concluded that a walnut-enriched diet led to marked improvement in learning skills, memory, and motor development, as well as in a reduction to levels of anxiety. The initial findings were based on the results of a rodent study. According to current thinking, mice and humans share as much as 85% of their DNA. Nevertheless, there may be a gap between what was learned on the one hand and what would be applicable to humans on the other. To put it another way, you might wonder or worry just how much of a difference that 15% makes. And since mice and humans obviously operate on different cognitive levels, it's not exactly clear how to straightforwardly apply the results of that particular study. If a walnut-eating mouse is able to find a morsel of cheese through a maze 5% faster than a non-walnut-eating mouse, it isn't exactly obvious to me, anyway, what that might mean for my prospects of dodging dementia. Given this, it is encouraging that human clinical trials have also associated walnut consumption with better cognitive performance and improvement in memory. For example, in 2016, one set of researchers found evidence of the benefit of regular walnut consumption in delaying the onset of age-related cognitive impairment. 4 years later, in 2020, a 2-year study found that walnuts might delay cognitive decline in subgroups at higher risk. A lot of the enthusiasm is based on this fact. Walnut consumption appears to counteract oxidative stress and inflammation, which are two drivers of cognitive decline. More on both of these in just a minute. It often takes many years for cognitive decline and dementia to develop. Therefore, a key takeaway from some of this research is the following. Early and long-term dietary supplementation with walnuts may help to maintain cognitive functions and may reduce the risk of developing or delay the onset and or slow the progression of mild cognitive impairment and full-blown dementia. Walnuts may be further able to reduce oxidative damage, increase antioxidant defense, and decrease neuroinflammation. Other animal and human studies have suggested that walnuts may also decrease the risk or progression of other brain disorders, such as Parkinson's disease, stroke, and depression, as well as of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. The latter is all the more vital given the claim by some researchers that various dementias might be best reclassified as type 3 diabetes. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me get into that speculative reclassification in a future presentation. For the time being, here's ye olde bottom line. These reports suggest the benefits of a walnut-enriched diet in brain disorders and in other chronic diseases due to the additive or synergistic effects of walnut components for protection against oxidative stress and inflammation in these diseases. Let's talk serving suggestions for a moment. Of course, there's a lot of variability and guesswork in trying to get to an ideal serving size, which probably will vary slightly from person to person anyway. One problem is that herbs and other food items like walnuts don't necessarily have the same amounts of active ingredients from portion to portion. The fancy word for this is that these grocery items are not necessarily standardized. That said, a number of studies suggest that you may benefit from something in the vicinity of 1 to 2 ounces of walnuts per day. If you want to ballpark that measurement, one article roughly equates 1 ounce with 1/4 cup of walnuts. That's about 6 whole walnuts, or about a dozen halves. Obviously then 2 ounces would be a half a cup, and that would be approximately 12 walnuts or 24 halves. Now, if that sounds like a lot to you every day, keep the following in mind. Firstly, Alzheimer's is scary. So if you're like me, you might think that it's worth stuffing a few walnuts in your mouth every day to avoid it. Secondly, the potential benefits of eating walnuts include more than just maintaining cognitive function, as we just alluded to. Also relevant is a purported reduction of risk for cardiovascular disease, depression, and type 2 diabetes, all of which are also risk factors for developing Alzheimer's. So they're bad on their own, and they can also pave the road for cognitive decline. Finally, while maximum benefit might require consistently eating 2 full ounces of walnuts each and every day, intuitively, if we could manage to eat at least some walnuts every once in a while, we'd be slightly better off than we would be otherwise. Though admittedly, I'm just being hopeful and sort of speculating here. Let me just tack on 2 quick addenda. One scientific and the other more traditional. Scientists involved in studying the potential health benefits of walnuts have posited that at least part of the explanation for their encouraging results is that walnuts are potent antioxidants. The word antioxidant is thrown around a lot these days. I've spent time in past videos suggesting ways to get a handle on the concept. As a first pass, an easy illustration is that of rust. When a piece of iron is exposed to oxygen, whether in air or sometimes in water, it can go through an often slow process of chemical change. This process, well known to us, transforms the iron, or parts of it, into rust. Chemically, of course, rust is iron oxide. So unsurprisingly, the process is also called oxidation. Well, this is the idea. Metals like iron are not the only things that can undergo such changes. And even though parts of your body don't turn into rust, strictly so-called, they nevertheless can undergo similar and similarly damaging alterations. In human beings, the changes are often referred to as oxidative stress, and in the case of the body, the culprits are a class of reactive molecules known as free radicals. Some are created as byproducts of normal metabolism, while others get inside of our bodies from the environment. Consequently, aging and pollution both work against us here. Scientists can't say for sure why some people get dementia and other people don't, even when risk factors are similar. Nevertheless, many scientists do hold that at least one causal factor is the accumulation in the brain of a particular kind of protein called amyloid beta. This is otherwise known as the dreaded plaque. Well, it turns out that these plaques increase free radicals inside of neurons, and this can lead to oxidative damage and to neuronal cell death. Now, without getting too technical, and hopefully you're not yelling at me too late, antioxidants are substances believed to protect against, slow down, or even possibly reverse these harmful changes. Not to put too fine a point on it, but walnuts are thought to decrease amyloid beta fibrillation, or the process whereby amyloid beta proteins form themselves into dangerous plaques. And for students of folklore, history, and holistic medicine, let me tack on just one more footnote. There is an ancient belief that medicinal plants tend to look like the part of the body that they treat. Stated the other way around, according to this notion, called the Doctrine of Signatures, an herbalist may identify his or her anatomical target by a plant's shape or texture or whatever. But if this is so, then the Doctrine of Signatures may predict that walnuts would be good for the brain. Why? Because walnuts arguably look like little brains. Here's what the 17th century English botanist William Coles wrote about walnuts. Walnuts bear the whole signature of the head. The kernel is good for the brains, which it resembles, being environed with a shell which imitates the skull. As stated earlier, at present, unfortunately, there is no cure for Alzheimer's disease. And you definitely shouldn't think of these developments, however hopeful, as magical. They're certainly not. And it's important to register the point that there are some naysayers. For example, the 2-year dietary study mentioned a moment ago cautioned that 2 years of eating walnuts appeared to have no discernible effect on cognition in healthy elders. That said, dementia is obviously devastating. And I can't speak for you, but my desire not to end up like my dad is so strong that, frankly, I feel like it is worth grasping at even the slenderest threads of hope. And in this case, there is great evidence that dietary supplementation with fruit or vegetable extracts high in antioxidants, and this includes blueberries, strawberries, walnuts, and Concord grape juice, can decrease our vulnerability to oxidative stress and support general good health as well as optimal cognitive function. Additionally, even though the evidence is inconclusive as to whether increasing nut consumption contributes to the maintenance of cognitive functions throughout life or reduces the risk of dementia, nevertheless, it appears that the benefit of nut intake on cognition is more noticeable in individuals who are at higher risk of cognitive impairment. It's worth pointing out that although we can make guesses about well-known factors like genetics, for example, the APOE gene, or about lifestyle, for example, a person is at higher risk of dementia if they have a history of smoking or if they're obese, etc. Nevertheless, it's hard to say precisely what our individual risk level is for any of us. And remember, the number one risk factor is aging. The older you are, the higher your risk. So all that to say, even though I don't personally care for walnuts, I may end up choking them down anyway just to try to reduce my risk, even if it's only a little bit. For more broad-based dietary suggestions, including expansion of the point about things like blueberries and strawberries, see my video summarizing some of the important elements of the so-called MIND diet. And of course, adding in healthy foods like walnuts or blueberries or whatever is only part of the picture. You'll also want to avoid certain things as well, such as sugar, which was the focus of an earlier presentation. Finally, to give you 10 recommendations for other specific lifestyle changes that might help you and me to avoid dementia, see my dedicated video on trying to lower Alzheimer's risk. In the meantime, if you found something of interest in this video, please click like to help signal your appreciation to YouTube. And if you'd like to see more dietary and lifestyle tips, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. If you have others in your network who might also be interested in Alzheimer's proofing their own lives and their own diets, kindly share the original video link with them. Either way, I look forward to joining you in a future video, and I wish you all the best in preserving your own cognitive health.